Hello, I'm Iona Ballantyne and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Tuesday the 30th of December. And we have got some cracking games coming up tonight.
We need to take all the good things from our performance and convert that into a performance that will give us 3 points.
I like the attitude. The attitude was really, really good. The spirit, the competitive spirit was really, really good.
A tough test for Wilfried Nancy's men as they journey to Fir Park to face Motherwell. And two teams who have frustrated their fans this season face off.
Bowie's at the edge of the box, chance to shoot, scores! 3-0! It's there! Goal Aberdeen! And it's yes for Carlson!
Hibs and Aberdeen clash at Easter Road with both clubs looking to build momentum. And there's an absolutely vital game at Dens Park as Dundee host Kilmarnock.
Very good. You know, we obviously haven't had enough of those this season thus far, but I was really proud of the performance.
I want to see us be confident, play forward, create chances. That's how you get wins.
We'll preview all the Premiership action right here.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Well, joining me this morning, former Kilmarnock, Celtic, Motherwell and Dundee striker Cillian Sheridan. Cillian, good morning. We're in that week between Christmas and New Year. Are you aware of what day we're on?
Well, I'm just thankful that at the start you said Tuesday, the 30th of December. So that was my signal for what day it is. So thank you very much.
I know, I'm glad I said that too, because I honestly thought it was Wednesday. So, also joined us this morning, former Rangers, St Mirren, Dundee and Falkirk striker Rory Loy. Rory, are you quite happy with what day we're on?
Yes, indeed. I'm just listening to you rhyme off the two sets of clubs that me and Cillian have been at. I think we've covered most of the top flight.
I know, that was a big introduction this morning.
Well, I'm always waiting for the fixture list to hear the fixtures been whatever games are coming up, and then I know which of the teams I'm going to be listed as.
Yeah, you can tick off whoever's on this morning. Well, there is plenty to get into this morning. We're going to start at Fir Park. Cillian, let's start with you. Wilfried Nancy, is he out of the woods yet?
No, I don't think so. I don't. I think it's a massive game for him. I think it's a game he needs to win. I remember saying it to someone beforehand that I think before the Rangers game he needed to win every game between now and I think there was like 4 games or something between the fixture. And I remember thinking he really needed to win all 4 to give himself any sort of cushion going into that or to build himself up some sort of credit. I think probably starting to see more of his style of play now, creating lots of chances, giving up chances. It's, I don't know if it is exciting, kind of a style of football. It's probably not if you're a Celtic fan watching it and you see how many chances the team is giving up, it's probably a little bit, not uncomfortable to watch, but a bit heart in the mouth stuff. But you can't deny the amount of chances that his style creates. And I think up until now, the goals Celtic have scored, it probably easily could have been doubled that figure. Just if there was a better finishing, I think. But I think you're starting to see the team click a little bit and play a little bit more of his actual style of play.
Well, Rory, he did say after the Livingston match he wanted a chaotic game. Is that the type of thing that the fans want to hear? I mean, we also need to take into consideration that English is not his first language.
Yeah, it almost had a Harlem Globetrotters type feel to it. You know, you score 5, we score 6, that type of idea. I think I agree with Cillian. It's glaringly obvious the chances they're giving up. You know, you look at Yang for Montano's second goal. His positional sense, he's tucked way in next to the right centre back, and if he's in his correct position, and this isn't a go at Yang to be fair, because I've been there. I've played in a 4-3-3, and I've been dragged back to left full back, and I've no idea what I'm doing at times. So it's really not easy. But I do feel, as Cillian says, that going forward, Celtic do look a lot better now. They should have scored more goals than they have. But tonight's a fascinating fixture because Motherwell, if they play their cards right, get down the sides, try and trouble the left centre-back and the right centre-back in wider areas and get balls into the box. There's goals to be had. but Celtic they have looked a different beast in the last couple of games in terms of the chances they are creating as well.
At the other end, though, Cillian, their defence is still a work in progress. I mean, that back line is still very fragile, and Livingston created the chances that other teams could have put away.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like Rory was saying, Motherwell will go in looking and knowing how they can exploit Celtic. But I don't really think Wilfred Nancy is particularly bothered by that. I think he just thinks, if, like Rory was saying there, like if they score, if a team comes and scored 2 or 3 goals against us, I'm confident in my team going and scoring 5 every game. And I've been saying it for the last few games. If Celtic had finished a lot of their chances, they would have at least 5 goals in every game. So like, I wouldn't be, if we're coming in and not talking about the game afterwards and it's like a 6-5, 5-3 game or something like that with like 7 or 8 goals, I don't think anyone would really be surprised. Motherwell kind of went through that patch earlier in the season where creating loads of chances and not finishing them. So it could be in for a really good game if both teams play the way they can play, but can actually finish the chances that they both create.
It was quite interesting, Rory, because there's a piece on the BBC Sports Scotland website. It's a preview piece which is highlighting the fact that this is a match that could be dubbed El Pasico, given the two sides' love of passing football.
Yeah, but to be fair, they both pass with a purpose. I think there would have been questions raised about that after Wilfred Nancy's first 3 or 4 games. Although, as Cillian quite rightly highlights, that there were signs there that his style of play was shining through. Celtic have to win. That's just the be all and end all, and we all know that. And if it doesn't work out that way, then he's going to get criticised. But they did play some good stuff. Motherwell play some good stuff as well. So I didn't think I would ever say this, but it'll be interesting to see the possession stats tonight. I don't think I've ever said that in my life, and I don't know if I'll ever say it again.
We'll talk about that after, Rory. But I mean, Cillian, for Motherwell, they still look decent at the weekend. Losing to Rangers, they will be very keen to get back to picking up points.
Yeah, definitely. Their place in the table isn't unwarranted, or they're not there by luck or anything, or they're not there due to other teams faltering. They deserve to be where they are. They're a really good, attractive team to watch. Well coached, you can see they really believe in what their manager's trying to do. And I think they'll go into it confidently. They'll probably feel a little bit maybe hard done by from the Rangers game. They created loads of chances. Jack Butland made a lot of good saves. Albeit Rangers probably had a few chances as well. But I think they'll go into that knowing that they can go and they can compete. Probably a bit more so than previous seasons and years gone by, where Motherwell and teams like that, where you think if we just kind of like, if you're up for it enough, it's enough to kind of put up a game against Celtic or Rangers, whereas now they know they can go into games like this and actually compete with them in a possession sense as well, passing style as well, where they can go and they could potentially outpass a Rangers or a Celtic team, and it's probably something that Motherwell fans haven't really been able to say for a long time, I'd say. So it seems to be a good place to be at right now, as a fan and probably as a player as well. Looks like a team that's a real enjoyable team to be playing in.
Yeah, it certainly is, and that's the thing. They are still missing their top scorer, Tawanda Masinisa. He's at the Africa Cup of Nations, but he's out there and he's scoring goals.
I think they'll genuinely be lucky to keep a hold of him. I think the start he's had, the goals he scored, and he's continuing to do it at an international level in a big tournament. So it'll be interesting if they can hold on to him in January.
Where would you place him, Cillian? Would you say kind of an Aberdeen, the Hibs of Hearts is the next step for him, or would you place him at an Old Firm side in terms of just obviously the context of the Scottish League? He might move out with the Scottish League, but in the context of the Scottish League, where would you place him in terms of a potential move?
I think it's a bit funny, like with clubs where there can be a bit, they can be a bit ignorant to buying players from clubs like Motherwell or St Mirren or stuff like that. You see it in the last few seasons when clubs like that are doing well. The other bigger clubs don't really go and take their players. Probably see it more so with Celtic and Rangers. But if it would, my guess would be that it would be a club out with Scotland. And just for the fact that he's done it, it's good that he's done it for Motherwell in the Scottish League, but the fact he's doing it at a major tournament probably will alert bigger clubs in different leagues. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him leave the country and leave the league.
Well, taking that into consideration, Rory, how much of a priority is a clinical striker for Motherwell in January?
Yeah, I mean, it's a priority, but the thing is, Cillian's already mentioned Celtic and the need for a goal scorer. I know Majovski's caught a little bit of form recently, but Rangers need a goal scorer. They're gold dust. In terms of, strikers that can come in at a reasonable price, there's got to be an element of gamble for any striker you bring in, because if that striker is scoring goals in the prospective leagues, then they're going to cost you, a lot of money, unless you're, going further afield, like Jamestown Analytics, and that's where they've got a lot of praise, uncovering players that can score goals and create goals and things, and getting them in at a very reasonable price. But listen, Motherwell, Celtic, Rangers, St Mirren, Hearts, doesn't matter who it is. They would give everything they've got for a striker that can put the ball in the back of the net, and it doesn't matter if they've already got one. They'll take as many of them as they can get, but the problem is finding them.
Gold dust, Rory. We've got 2 here this morning. What about that?
Well, I wouldn't be too confident in saying that about myself there, Iona. There's a reason I've had so many clubs.
Back in the day.
All right, Rory, you can put both of us in that. It's all right. I wasn't going to be offended.
Let's talk about Hibs and Aberdeen, Rory. We have to start with that statement victory for Hibs over Hearts at the weekend. How much of a boost will that have given the players heading into tonight?
Yeah, it'll give them a boost. They'll want to back it up, though. You look at the nature of the win. I think David Gray will just be delighted they got over the line, because had they conceded a last-minute equaliser, it would have changed the complexion of the week entirely. It doesn't matter how you win a derby. You could be 5-0 up and win 5-4. It doesn't matter as long as you win it. So that will give them great belief going into tonight. Aberdeen, I wouldn't say they're in great form in terms of how they're playing, but they seem to be picking up points, whether it's 1 point, 3 points through playing okay. So if Hibs turn up tonight, they'll fancy themselves in terms of getting 3 points, and before you know it, the top 5 or 6 teams in the league could be looking very, very tight, and it could become very exciting.
Can Hibs use that result at the weekend as a springboard for the rest of the season, Cillian? Or they'll be hoping to, I could imagine anyway.
Yeah, I think they need to. I think they've probably been riding the momentum of the last 6 months of last season a bit. This season, although they're not in a terrible league position, they would be expecting, I think, to have been doing better than they are. A lot of games that the draws and stuff that they should have been winning. The only danger is it's one of those games where everyone is on such a high and it's such a big result that it can be hard to maintain that for the next game, which is something I think kind of the really good teams can do. They can just park that, go into the next game and focus on it and forget about it. So it'll be interesting to see how they react. Having a big win rather than a disappointing result. Sometimes it can be a harder thing to maintain and take into the next game.
Because that is the thing, Rory, we've seen it season after season, especially last season, in terms of Hibs and the need to build consistency. They do get that good run, things go really well, and then you look at the start of this season too and just kind of finding that consistency.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I don't think it helps the fact that Hearts have been doing so well this season. Hibs are not in a bad position in the league. I just think the Hibs fans feel that there was so many more points available to them had they been a little bit more concise and had a little bit more conviction in the final third. You look at Kieran Bowie; he's a young striker, but he's a little bit raw in terms of his finishing at the moment. He'll score the odd chance where you think, my goodness me, how's he managed to do that? But then he'll miss 2 or 3. If he can find his goal scoring boots on a more consistent basis, because his general and all round play is really, really good, that'll help the team. It goes back to that striker that can score goals, that can make such a difference. That he can turn 1-1 draws into 2-1 wins out of nowhere, etc. So, look, I don't think Hibs are in a bad place at all. I do think that the Hibs fans are slightly disappointed given the success Hearts have had this season, and that's probably put a slight dampener on any success they've had. But certainly at the weekend, beating Hearts and putting a dent in their title hopes will give Hibs a huge, huge lift. And as you kind of said at the top of this segment, give them the momentum they need moving forward in the league.
I mean, Cillian, Hibs did fade late on in that match against Hearts. How does David Gray look to fix that?
I think he'd probably put it more down to a focus thing, but like Rory was saying, he might not want to dwell on it too much and maybe try and just embrace the win and maybe try and feed into the confidence of it. You kind of have games like that. It can be sometimes easier for the team 3-0 down, where it's kind of like the game's up, it's done. What do we have to lose? Let's throw a little bit of everything at it, especially in a derby like that. And I think the way Hearts have been, Hearts probably knew if they got 1 goal back, they'd always have a chance. So maybe you can look at it at the point of view of they've done well to withstand a late kind of surge of Hearts pressure. But I think even if they'd won 3-0, he'd still be going over he'd still be going over chances that they would have given up had Hearts not had scored. I think he's probably quite a meticulous manager like that anyway, so I don't think he'll be too hung up on it, but it's like any good manager, he'll be picking apart the game anyway.
Rory, just looking at Hibs and Aberdeen, are these 2 teams who should be doing better in the league?
I don't know. I mean, all Aberdeen and Hibs fans will look at themselves and say we should be finishing, third in the league, second in the league, whatever it may be, attempting to try and split the old firm. But the actual logistics of achieving that are extremely difficult. Hearts have had a fantastic start and may well do it this year. They may well finish first, never mind second or third. But as we've seen over the last 40 years, that is incredibly difficult to do. So I think there's games that Aberdeen and Hibs will look back on this season and say, if only we'd taken that chance, if only we've picked up those 3 points, it could have made such a difference to our season. But you reminded us at the start of the show, we're on the 30th of December, so listen, there's still half the season to go, Iona, and Aberdeen and Hibs have got ample opportunity to go and pick up 3 points on a consistent basis, and things can turn very quickly. But what I like about this season is we don't have one of these big sides labouring in the bottom 6 and finishing in the bottom 6, etc. I think all these teams will finish in the top 6, and if Aberdeen and Hibs can find that consistency we've spoken about, then I think we could have a really, really exciting run into the end of the season, whether that be for first place, second place, third place, fourth place. I think it'll be really tight, and we'll have some great fixtures after the split.
Cillian, it's kind of been the theme of the morning so far, but are Aberdeen missing a reliable striker up front?
Perhaps. I don't know if they're creating the same amount of volume of chances as some of the other teams we were talking about already that are missing a striker. I don't know. They're just a team this year that has just kind of gotten by, like without really even going through their bad patch at the start. It wasn't like it's a weird way to describe it, but it wasn't like a spectacularly bad patch for them. And then the time where they've changed it and got themselves back in it, they weren't playing spectacularly good to get out of it. They've just kind of just been going along like, I don't know, like meh, like like not really. I don't know. I just struggled to find the excitement there. The European run has been good for them, maybe to give a little bit of a break, or although it hasn't probably been as good results wise, but I don't know. I just think if you're an Aberdeen fan, there's maybe the European trips have been probably the highlights.
Although not spectacular as a whole, I'm sure the fans will agree with that at the moment. Now, finally, let's look at what looks like an absolutely crucial game at the bottom, Rory. Dundee hosting Kilmarnock. Are you seeing any signs of Stephen Presley getting Dundee to gel?
They're a strange team, Dundee, because they're the epitome of you would rather win one game and lose 2 or 3 when you're down the bottom than, play well and draw every few games. So, they've beaten Falkirk, they've beaten Celtic this season, they've taken a few hammerings off Aberdeen. They're so difficult to predict. But what I will say with regards to Dundee over Kilmarnock or Livingston is that they can pull an iron out the fire, and they can pick up 3 points that you're not expecting, and those are valuable 3 points when they come along. They're not always in fixtures like these where it's the bottom two. They were 2-0 up at Livingston very recently and gave up a 2-goal lead. So I think Dundee will be okay. It's a strange thing to say because it will be a 3-horse race, but at this moment in time, whilst things can change, especially after the January transfer window, to answer your question, I think there are signs, but the inconsistency is, we use that word all the time, but Dundee are, one end of the scale to the other end of the scale week on week. It's quite incredible. So if they can go and win that one, then they'll find themselves in a pretty comfortable position, having just beaten Falkirk.
What about Cillian? They are really struggling for confidence just now. Is this a club in crisis? Just looking, they haven't won since the start of October.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you can see this. They're desperate for a win, and then the longer each game goes on and goes by, the further away you think a win is coming. You go into games and you might go a goal down, and you're kind of like, here we go again, another game. Or even if you're in a winning position, there's a sense of like, right, when's it coming? When's this team going to equalise or peg us back or get up on us? So it's a bit. I think I've said it before about, I think possibly Dundee, but Kilmarnock are in the same boat where they're just lucky that Livingston have been worse than them and Dundee have been as bad as them probably. Whereas the other teams that are maybe 3-4 points above them, you're expecting those teams to rise up the table and win more games than those three I've just mentioned. I think the game tonight is a draw written all over it. I think, like Rory was saying, Dundee pull an iron out of the fire, and I think the problem is that was on Saturday. Their problem is they haven't done that consistently 2 games in a row, and I just think I just can't see anything other than a draw. That's Dundee possibly slight favourites, but I just think the problem is they've had their win. That's that one win in 3 or 4 games has just kept their heads above water. Has probably been and gone, I think, for this week anyway. Maybe in 2 or 3 weeks we can see their fixtures and tip them then. But I think it's a draw written all over it.
Rory, just moving on to Rangers at home to St Mirren. It's not pretty, but they have been grinding out some wins.
Yeah, they have, but the law of averages suggests if you're going to play like they did against Motherwell, I'm not saying they didn't have enough chances to win the game, but they also they gave up enough chances that they could have easily lost the game. I think if you play like that on a consistent basis, the law of averages suggests you're gonna lose some games. So St Mirren are a good side. They'll go to Ibrox. They've won some big games this season. I know they've struggled in the league at times, and they're probably not where they would want to be given the nature of their past 3 seasons. But I think St Mirren will go to Ibrox and they'll ask Rangers questions, and I think Rangers need to be a far, far better version of themselves. Motherwell were unlucky not to come away with at least a point. Controversial decision in the last minute could have seen them pick up a point as well. So Rangers will need to be at the top of their game tonight because St Mirren are are still riding the crest of a wave in terms of that cup win, following it up with a win against Livingston and things. So, it'll be an intriguing one. And it's not often you see this when Rangers are at home to a team in the bottom six, but I think it's a tough one to call. I think there'll be a 1 goal in it either way.
And finally, Cillian, Livingston host Dundee United. Livy have now gone 17 games without a win. It's tough down there.
Yeah, definitely. I think probably feel that he's been a bit unlucky to be so far adrift. David Martindale, I think he kind of knows the team he has. He's probably assembled a more of a experienced older squad, probably thinking that would be enough to help them survive this season. I don't know, maybe if the going up the way they came at a slight surprise, because generally the team coming up through the playoffs historically isn't a team that comes up, and then I don't know if maybe he'd kind of, not that he would have given up on them ever going up, but it's probably a different transfer plans and stuff for the season coming up. So I feel like he just went out and was signing every experienced free agent during the summer, and just hasn't quite worked out the way you might have thought. But Dundee United aren't firing on all cylinders either. I think he'll probably fancy his chances of picking something up, especially at home. But it's a game he probably needs to win before the new year to give them some sort of hope going into the new year.
All right, well, some huge games tonight. We cannot wait to see how they pan out. Now, that is all we have got time for. Many thanks to Cillian and Rory, and thank you for listening. Now, remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day. So to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone. Enjoy the final games of 2025. Let's see what sort of badness 2026 will throw up. Goodbye.
It's petty, it's ill-informed.
Are President Trump's cuts having an adverse effect on research?
It's pandemonium.
What number's that in the periodic table?
PD, number 47. I don't know.
I've done the shooting clays before. The longer you do it, the shorter obviously it gets.
When Craig said there he'd been shooting the clays, I imagined him out a back line. Somebody's washing, you know.
William Shatner, his secretary, contacted me to say, when Bill has a question now and again, can he contact you? And then one time he called me up and he wanted to know, David, what is a photon? I'm thinking, this is incredible. Captain Kirk wants to know what a photon is, you know.
I once met a guy who referred to a globe as a bomb app. A bomb app.
A bomb app. Look at the bomb app.
What we normally do is spin the bomb app and we see where we go on holiday.
The Off the Ball podcast, available every Monday on BBC Sounds.